So by now you've likely heard the absurd news that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that AOC, is only being given 60 seconds to speak at the DNC's Democratic National Convention. It's an insulting offer, I feel, to somebody that's one of the rising stars, the brightest lights in the Democratic Party. That's somebody that represents the party's future, and that's somebody that fits all three groups where Biden is struggling, should be given a much larger and more prominent role at the convention. We've seen the data. Biden struggles with young people, progressives, and Latinos, and AOC fits all three of those groups in one package, and she's a top congressional fundraiser. She's a young up-and-coming politician, yet she still has national name recognition among the people that are going to be watching this. It's a no-brainer to have her on the schedule and have her front and center, but we see that while she's getting just 1 minute, they're giving Republicans like Michael Bloomberg and John Kasich, and they're giving washed up has-beens like Hillary Clinton, and also controversial people connected to Epstein like Bill Clinton, far more substantive roles. But a new poll from CBS shows that AOC is far more desired among Democrats as a top speaker at the convention in comparison to Bill, Hillary, and John Kasich. They asked a whole bunch of people, who do you want to see speak at the convention? And AOC wasn't at the top of the list. At the top of the list, of course, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they're the nominees. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, very high up the list. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, also very popular. But AOC is basically at the same level as Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, obviously very prominent. I'm not a huge fan, but I can understand why a lot of people would want to hear from her. Nonetheless, she's far more popular among potential speakers than Bill, than Hillary, and then John Kasich. And the whole point is that they've packed the schedule full of conservatives and moderates and Republicans, with this mythical idea that that's how they're going to win the election, which is exactly what cost Hillary Clinton, when Joe Biden's problem right now isn't getting Republicans to support him. There's already a lot of Republicans that have moved over to him. That's what that Lincoln Project and that's what the Never Trump Republican movement is all about. They're already with Joe. What Joe needs to do now is energize the base. And the way you do that is get people like AOC and others front row center for more than a minute to speak, to talk about how the party's future is bright, to talk about how, despite the disagreements, she feels there's a lot to like in the party going forward. You might disagree with that. A lot of my viewers are far more cynical on the future of the Democratic Party under Biden and Harris, but purely as a political move, it only makes sense to have AOC give the rubber stamp with a full-length keynote type speech. But we understand that the reason she's not being given time isn't a mistake. It isn't a blunder. It isn't an error. It was a purposeful calculation by the party elite. 100%. The fact of the matter is, AOC, they know she could bring more votes in. They know she would bring more eyeballs to the camera. They know that she would bring so much enthusiasm. But on the one hand, they have all of that truth, and then far more, weighty is the worry that by giving her such a platform, they would empower her in 4 years or in 8 years, whether it's for a Senate run or whether it's for a presidential primary challenge. They do not want to give her oxygen. Jeet here, great tweet exposing this reality, says when people were sharing the data, he says, it's precisely because ordinary Democrats want to hear from AOC that party leaders only want to give her 60 seconds. Again, ordinary rank and file Democrats, not party elites, not super politicos, but people that were polled that identify as Democrats, rank and file people, want to hear from AOC more than they do a lot of people. They want to hear her speak. Giving her 60 seconds is a way the party can check the box and say, well, we did have AOC on the schedule, don't you know? We do welcome the voices of young progressives, young leftists at our, biggest platform, while simultaneously not giving her the space to make a bigger impression. As much as she's known nationally already, a lot of people only know her through distortion. They only know her through the memes. They only know her through snippets. Giving her 10, 15, maybe even just 5 minutes at this convention could change a lot of minds. And the DNC does not want that. I'm going to give you 2 words and 1 date. Barack Obama, 2004. At the time, he was just a state senator, a lower profile, at least in terms of political achievement, than AOC. He had not yet won national office. He was, in a sense, and I don't mean this disparagingly, effectively a nobody. Effectively a nobody with limited political accomplishments. And he was given a great platform, and he did fantastically with it. Again, ideology aside, it was one of the greatest speeches in the last 20, 30, 40 years in American politics. I don't think it's aged well, but at the time, it was what people wanted to hear. Not just Democrats, but also a lot of independents as well. And he rode that speech to the momentum he needed to defeat Hillary Clinton in the primaries and become president. And he's still beloved by the Democrats, at least, to this day. That speech was a key turning point in the history of the Democratic Party and, of course, Obama's personal career. And don't you dare think that they don't realize that giving AOC that moment and her seizing that moment could lead to the same sort of thing. And they don't want that, because we all know there's a very real possibility in about 4 years that there's going to be a primary. That Joe Biden, there's a good chance he won't run in 4 years. There's a good chance that he'd be a one-term guy. And there's a real sense that Kamala Harris is going to be given a coronation to the nomination, that she is going to be VP for 4 years and then be the nominee for the party in 2024. And if they win, be the nominee, obviously, in 2028. But what if AOC, as a result of many factors, but potentially also a really rip-roaring 2020 Democratic National Convention speech, builds a national profile even greater than she has now, reaches out to not just the Bernie Sanders camp, but a lot of other people that say, this young woman, she's the real deal. Not only do I like her, not only do I agree with her, but I could see in her a future president, or at the very least, a senator from New York State. And so that's what I think's happening here. Again, we can say this is a blunder tactically, and it is. It is in the sense that the Democratic Party is purposely weakening their efforts at reaching out to the groups Biden needs most to energize before the election. But when you look at it through the long-term strategy of the Democratic Party, who have proven that they'd rather lose with Biden than win with Bernie, they've proven that, then it makes perfect sense. Don't give AOC the oxygen she needs to build a truly national movement. I don't know if they're going to actually stop her. The DNC keynote isn't quite as important as it was back in 2004. The internet has changed things. But you can bet they're going to do everything they can to stop AOC and other members of the squad from becoming legitimate national challengers to Kamala Harris in 2024.